Hey there, and welcome to Rob's Custom Wood Shop. My name's Rob, and today I'm going to be using all of this to transform that to this. So stick around and let's get to it. For today's project, we're using some typical grade A Canadian lumber, all twisted and warped, fresh from the box store. But that's okay, we're going to turn this 2x6 into a 5x1 perfectly square stock. At the miter saw, I cut off about a 2-inch piece to remove any checks and cracks in the lumber. From the cut end, I measure about 4 inches more than I need, just in case I get any snipe in the milling process. Then I cut it at the miter saw. Just cutting 40 inches off of this board made a drastic improvement on taking out some of the twist. Then I proceed over to the jointer. My jointer is set to take about a 32nd of an inch off on each pass, so it took roughly 8 to 9 passes to finally get one face of this board flat. Once that face was flat, I used it as a reference against the fence and jointed one edge, bringing that edge and my already flattened face to a perfect 90 degree after only a couple of passes. Then I moved to the next step, bringing the two faces parallel to each other using the planer. This is where I made a rookie mistake. I only measured one edge of the board when I set my planer. I should have measured both ends, because as you can hear, the opposite end was about 1/8 of an inch thicker than the lead end. And even after backing off my planer 2 full turns, it still struggled through the piece. And now, with that knowledge in hand, all the other passes went a lot smoother. Now with the two faces parallel and one face jointed, all that's left is to square up one side on the table saw. So that's the first step in the milling process done. I'm going to let this sit for about a day or two, then I'll come back out and I'll mill it to final dimension. Since watching the milling process is just so exciting, off camera I went ahead and I ran this board through the whole milling process a second time, and now it is a perfectly square 5x1 inch thick board. To make my clamp supports, I'm going to use 3/4 inch birch scraps. I laid out lines to maximize my cuts. The first thing I do is I cut all my pieces to length, which in this case is 12 inches. Once the length is established, I cut all the pieces to 7.5 inches wide or less to accommodate the jig I'm going to make. So what I did here was I made a simple jig for cutting these angles using my crosscut sled. I simply put a piece in. I made sure that my lines lined up on both sides, and I made a support bracket for each so I can continue to hold the piece here and still be safe. Now, since I wasn't smart enough to make an extra piece to do test cuts, this is my test cut, and it worked out perfect. So I cut the rest of them exactly the same. Once all the supports are cut, it's time to focus on the cleat again. At the miter saw, I cut one side square, flipped the piece over, measured from the cut end, and then cut it squares as well. To help prevent the supports racking side to side and to add a lot of horizontal support, I'm cutting in a 1/4 inch dado to accept the clamp supports. Now at this point, you may be thinking, why is he going through so much effort? It's just a clamp rack. And I would answer, anybody walking into my shop is more likely to see a shop project than a build project. So I try to make my shop projects to the same quality as a build project. Now that all the dados are finished, I can move on to making my pocket holes in my clamp supports. I drill 3 pocket holes in each clamp support. So to attach the clamp supports to the cleat, I use glue in the dado, then holding the support square, I drive in my 3 pocket hole screws. And then comes the fun task of emptying out my clamp rack. Once it's empty, I can remove the 4 screws and take it off the wall. Now because the new rack is longer and a little bit more awkward, I measure down from the ceiling to where the bottom of my rack is going to be, and then I drive a screw in for the rack to rest on. Using a level, I pivot one end and then I secure it to the wall using some 2.5 inch screws. Once it's completely fastened, I give it the ultimate stress test. And then, after a 10-minute break, because I'm out of shape,
I load the clamp rack back up. Now if you see the empty spaces in my clamp rack, that's my attempt of looking into the future. But you know what they say, you can never have enough clamps, and I suppose clamp rack falls into that too.
Do you have any questions, tips, tricks, or suggestions on this project? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video, please hammer that thumbs up. And if you want to see more of my videos, don't forget to subscribe and ring that little notification bell so you never miss when I upload new content. Thanks for watching and hope to see you on the next project.